Morning.
Morning.
Well, good morning. And welcome to Urban Agoge week 27. Let's go for a new beginning on things. Okay, so apologies for the last couple of months, well, 6 weeks, where I've been very sporadically making films. I want to get back to one a day, and I need to just get the resolve. Somebody said something pretty profound to me, and I can't remember who it was, but I think it was someone at work that said, you know, if you want to go for a run, put your sneakers on even if you don't want to, and step outside the door, and then you will go for a run. It's getting outside the door, like getting out of bed. You know, it's just overcoming the inertia, or overcoming the resistance, as the War on Art. It's a very good book, a very short book, and a very good audio book, which you can find on YouTube. Yeah, overcome the resistance. And I have been working a lot more. I've had a few stressful personal things to deal with. I went to that festival and got burnt out by it a little bit. Yeah, and watching the news. I've been watching the news far too much. So this is where I was the other day, hoping to do a video, but you know, we have very limited time, and I was teaching my father and his partner a little bit of survival type stuff, which is worrying when people I consider to be pretty damn logical start going, I want to do this weird stuff that you do, that, you know, you've been doing it for that long, but you know, you've got, you know, you never had a reason for it, and now I think they can see the reason. You know, things like societal collapse and, you know, Brexit and stuff like that, really terrible stuff, you know, could cause all kinds of impact. Yeah, and look how the rivers, you know, just bits of it get reshaped these days on a daily basis. It's not the same shape that it was when I first started doing this. That's not a problem. That's not global warming. So yeah, so it's been very rainy as well. So the combination of being just a bit worn out and allowing my own resistance to doing things building up has limited the number of videos I've made. But that was kind of me just sitting there. There were, you know, I have to be honest, there were lots of hours when I was just sitting there watching YouTube rather than doing something. So yeah, lots of stuff running about in my head. That's the problem when you think, how could the world be a better place? It's quite easy, unfortunately for us, to imagine it better, you know. And I suppose it works for the majority of the super wealthy, that we get worn out. You know, the people with the most fight in them have to fight harder to be heard, and after a while they burn out. Oh, heron. That's a sign of a healthy river. So yeah, it's easy to get burnt out. I mean, Extinction Rebellion sent me an email today, not personally, but one of their email send-outs, about how to recover for their activists for the last 2 weeks. And there seems to be an awful lot of support jobs available. So yeah, I think they need to use the Roman fighting method, where, you know, the guys at the front would fight for a short while, and as soon as it looked like they were flagging a bit, which is, you know, the moment at which you're most likely to be killed by an opponent, given that a lot of the times they were a little bit outnumbered, but they were more disciplined, the front rank would change places with the next rank behind. And that's what they did when they met enemies with organised blocks of soldiers, as in when they had the organised blocks of soldiers and the enemies didn't. You know, they'd blow a whistle and swap round. You know, they wrote about it. They said, you know, this is what we do. Isn't that crazy? That an army can write about its strategy knowing that illiteracy keeps the majority of their opponents out of the loop. Isn't that interesting, a concept? You know, a political and military force so confident in its technology of the written word that it would write down military manuals because they were absolutely certain that there was no one that could translate it. You know, the idea of discipline, you know, that they took from the Greeks, forming phalanxes, but ultimately going with a square formation that pretty much up until the invention of rapid fire automatic weapons, you know, stayed in use for, you know, the best part of 2,000 years. This is how you meet the enemy. Because if you meet the enemy like this, it's harder to break a square. It's much harder to break a square. In fact, unless you have some kind of mass bombardment technology like artillery, you can't break a square. Which is where Napoleonic military fighting techniques came up, you know, and they were still using that in the Boer War in the 1880s. So for hundreds and hundreds of years, if not thousands, the organised tend to beat the disorganised. And I think that's where Extinction Rebellion really came into its own, in that they were technically meeting an organised force, but they were not as easy to break up because they themselves were an organised force, even though they were heavily outnumbered. Yeah, it just blew my mind the way, you know, virtually every news network in the country was sort of going, oh yes, well you're protesting but in the wrong way. Now you're annoying people. Oh, yes, that's the point. I have to annoy you. I have to put myself at risk in order that you listen. You know, I mean, it does very much remind me of the Buddhist protest to the Vietnam War, where a number of monks set themselves on fire to protest it and just sat there and burned. I mean, that's a truly terrifying act of will. And it's those acts of will that change the world. It's the Million Man March. It's the Black Panthers. It's Extinction Rebellion. You know. But the great thing about Extinction Rebellion is there's no sort of religious leaning. There's no social class leaning, as far as I can tell. Although I have yet to go to a meeting. But I should think sometime in the next couple of weeks, or in the next month or so, I will be able to get to a meeting, because you can bet that these meetings are not going to be on a night that I'm off or I'm free to attend, so I will have to book off holiday time. And I have come out quite late, and it is half term, so the chances are I'll bump into people. Yeah, so it's kind of amazing. Let's turn this around. Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of interesting the way the act of will can be wielded and woven into something quite so superbly dangerous. You know, and Extinction Rebellion is just like one corner of the things we need to fix as a species. But I think if a majority of people could stand up in order to preserve the viability of human life on planet Earth, then I think all the other things, given that, you know, for the most part, we the people would have fought to save part of our civilization for future generations, you know, maybe we can solve all the other things. You know, it's awfully hard to be racist if you stood next to a person of colour. I mean, I'm saying racist from a white ethnocentric viewpoint, but it would be harder for a white racist man to remain racist if he'd stood in a line facing down police and the military with a person of colour, and the other way round. You know, you get to change, you know, someone else's viewpoint on the snap decision that they've made. And once you can do that, once you can look beyond skin tone or religion or, you know, class or any of the dividers that separate us from each other, that are artificially put there by income bracket, by job type, by skin colour, by religion, by orientation and gender. Once you take that apart and everybody goes, this was a human being that stood next to me and, you know, and helped me out when I was knocked down by a police baton charge, because that's coming. You know, there's no doubt about that. And the downside is, I remember a very long time ago, like a long time ago, talking to Digital Whiskey online via, I think it was a Mumble chat or something like that, or a multiple Skype chat, or even a Google Hangout that we'd failed to record, that, you know, when the stakes were high enough and I was going to be joined by people that believed as I did, and, you know, we were fighting for something important, I would prize up cobblestones in order to fight. Well, DW, that time may be upon us. How weird that you know, essentially the people that watch this show, how weird that look at all this, it's all been cleared. It's been cleared by that high water a few weeks ago, and look how fast stuff has grown back or started to recover. How amazingly rapidly nature just goes, nope, there's a gap. So yeah, the sort of people that watch this, that like wild camping, that like self-sufficiency, that like the idea of green technology and renewables and getting away from the kind of lifestyle that we're kind of forced to deal with, you know, the people that want to live on more on their own terms than anyone else, or can see that, you know, certain skills would be fairly handy that don't exactly exist in the mainstream. The number of people that are looking on and thinking, well, is this for real? Man, there's a lot of trees down. So yeah, it is. We live in interesting times. I don't know whether this whole Extinction Rebellion thing is going to peter out. I just don't know. So yeah. Okay, hold on. There's some people out for a walk over there, but we're well out of range. In Fallout 4 terms, we're hidden. Yeah, so there's that. And then, you know, you've got stuff like Brexit, which has kind of sucked in a lot of my attention, weirdly. Although, you know, I think post-Brexit Britain, if we did leave without a deal and there was another recession as a result, you know, didn't bear thinking about. And I'm in the most advantageous group, really. You know, I've got a full-time job. I've got got a place to live. You know, pains me to say it, but I'm white and working class, and you know, I could probably be okay. But it does bother me, this whole thing. You know, I think fascism would rise up. I think successive generations might vote for fascism or fascistic far-right parties. I think a lot of the colour would go out of our lives, figuratively and literally. I don't think people would want to live here, which is damning in and of itself. So yeah. I mean, there are all sorts of ideas. That I've been having, but it'd just be nice if there was a trusted news network. I really think that someone like The Guardian needs to move into video news. I mean, if you really wanted to protest and help out Extinction Rebellion, sign up. If you really wanted... Oh dear, I'm not entirely sure where I am now. I think I've come the wrong way. Yeah, if you really wanted to make a difference, obviously, Extinction Rebellion is kind of like the only game in town. There are a few issues that I have with it, but it's not like it's difficult to join. One thing I do like is that The Guardian have just openly said that they support the actions of Extinction Rebellion and stand behind them and will endeavour to report things accurately, which is unusual, but there again, The Guardian is an independent newspaper. So it may be that I will be paying some money into The Guardian every month from here on in. They haven't put up a paywall, there's nothing to really commend me, but I think that sort of reward, that sort of stepping up and saying, right, I don't agree with everything you say. I think some of your concepts are a bit nitpicky. I mean, they're not above criticising Extinction Rebellion. But, they criticised it for being very middle class, and there is only one answer. Working class people need to sign up and step up. So, yeah. It's a bit like that, so yeah, they don't seem to exclude anybody based on any recognisable trait, apart from people that are going to constantly disagree or claim that climate science is wrong. I think you might be asked to leave then if you're actively diluting the message or you're being violent, or those things will get you excluded from almost anyone else, any other group. So yeah, I thought that was a bit nitpicky. But if The Guardian had like Guardian TV, I think the BBC has been rather shameful. I think Sky News, and pretty much every, satellite cable and terrestrial television system has been woefully inadequate. And has just focused on, you've disrupted my life. How dare you? So yeah, I was pretty annoyed. Stupid questions like, how can you say so many people will die? It's like, well, we're not going to have enough drinking water, we're not going to have enough food. What do you think will happen? This could well be the start of a series of resource wars over the next 20 years. And it's all so pointless. It's all unnecessary. There isn't a single political party in my country that I can back with any sense of conscience. And I know that that kind of is a self-defeating sort of sound, but yeah, why is I mean, I don't want much. I want the sensible spending of my taxes. I'm not even sort of saying I shouldn't have to pay tax. You can't vote a democracy into having no tax of any kind. I mean, I appreciate that if you're very, very poor in the United States, you pay sales tax, and the idea of forking over a large percentage of your hard-earned money And in America, it is hard earned. You know, they really do. They are some of the hardest working people in the world. You know, your average working Joe American, they barely get paid leave. You know, yeah. They have to pay for their own medical insurance for the most part, or at least a top up into it. There's no such thing as company pensions, really. You know, that's because America's so deregulated. You know, and whenever you try and talk to someone about it, you know, they generally shy away from the logic because they're raised from birth to believe that socialist policies and communism are pretty much the same thing. But, you know, America wastes so much money. You know, it's actually cheaper to provide people with free healthcare. That's why governments in this country and other countries do it. You know, lost worker production adversely affects GDP. Lower happiness, you know, just general lower prosperity negatively affects GDP, always. You know, I've said it before and I'll say it again. People are wealth. You know, thanks to the Chaos Bunny that pointed that out to me. People are wealth. You know, they are the people that produced your taxes, your funds, you know, so that you can do things. And I'm just constantly amazed that that money is used to do bad things. It's like people have given you money because, you know, you've set up a system where it's illegal for them not to. So if you're forcibly taking money from people, then at least a fair proportion of that money should be spent in a way that benefits the people who you've taken it off, whether it's indirect or direct. And people are super paranoid. You know, we're really, really not going to get anywhere unless, you know, we can get a basic level of human expectation running planet-wide. You know, you have fear of other people if those other people don't have what you have. If you have a much better living standard, like a ridiculously better living standard, you fall into the wealthy person's trap of looking at someone that has nothing and being fearful of them, and then disproportionately spending money on systems that keep you apart from those people who have less than you, such as security, politicians that, you know, keep the poor too poor to do anything and keep the wealthy wealthy, or make them even more wealthy with tax cuts, private security, police forces, armies, you know. It would actually be significantly cheaper to introduce a basic human living standard. You know, this is the bare minimum any human on earth can expect. An education, housing, access to medical care, food, income if they need it. And yeah, a tiny proportion of that population might look like they're not doing anything. But humans aspire. You've got to put them in a position where they can do something about that aspiration, because when you frustrate it, crime happens, assaults happen, people become angry. Well, this was a very not shooting me episode. So yeah, I want my fully automated space communism. You know, it's stupid that we don't have it. You know, we only pollute the planet because we're letting corporations do that. People aren't really doing it. People, you know, if people use a product that destroys the earth, don't make any more of that product. You know, make the non-polluting kind cheaper. You know, have the world government produce a basic range of services, of personal transport, of, you know, or public transport that's basically cheap or free. You know, do not privatise it. Get people to work. You know, government housing that's of a decent standard. You know, You take away people's dignity and you have no idea what they'll do. So you then need to spend more money on the military or on the police to keep those people in line. You know, Star Trek. But with current technology, everybody has value. And it may not seem like that, and people may seem arrogant or difficult or stupid, but that's largely down to a lack of opportunity. And even though when it affects you personally, you just want to lash out at someone's obvious ignorance, that's ignorance, that's not willful ignorance. You know, that person would be more logical or more capable if they knew what that looked like. But it's not something we train people at the state school level. We don't train them to think. You know, the people that are trying to skim money off for themselves don't want smart people running around. Don't want organised people running around. Don't want people forming their own political parties and ousting them from power if they step out of line. Which is kind of like the birth of America. It was the idea behind the birth of British Parliament. You know. But there is a certain type of person that over time, you know, the first leader of the Labour Party in the UK was a mine worker. And not a manager of a mine worker, who got fired for attending his own brother's funeral, who died in a mine accident. Back when the Labour Party had a lot more integrity. So yeah, so that's where I'm going to leave it today. I wanted to get a video done. It may not be up until tomorrow, but hey, it'll be edited and rendered. So as always, thanks for listening to me whine and bitch and complain. This is just my process for solutions. Thanks for watching, and do take care.